All right, let's see who's placing bets on whether this thing's gonna start or not. Ha 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 ha. What's going on, guys? So I have found quite possibly the coolest video that I have ever found on the YouTubes. And it's actually regarding the IS300. More specifically, it's regarding reading one ECU immobilizer chip with a hacked up reprogramming tool that another YouTuber, he describes how to change how it works so that it can read the immobilizer chip on one ECU, and you can use that key information from that ECU to reprogram another completely separate ECU so that that ECU can now control your car. If you want to find out more about that, the videos for that are in the description. There's a guy named Binh who has a YouTube channel, Tuner with Kids, and you should subscribe to that because he's got some pretty good stuff. So I don't know him, I'm just recommending his channel because he seems like a pretty awesome guy. He references the video from DrShock. He's the guy that originally took the CH341A, the reprogramming tool that you can get on Amazon or on eBay, and you basically hack it up. It's made for a PC, but you hack it up to where you can read and write to the automotive ECUs, and so you could use on a bunch of different types of chips. Specifically the IS300 immobilizer chip that's on this ECU, and Binh from Tuner with Kids also uses it to change his mileage, I think. I didn't watch that video fully, but it seemed pretty interesting too. You could change your mileage on the, if you buy another odometer and you want to make your odometer match the mileage. That is really cool. I successfully loaded my my keys from my factory manual IS300 here onto this this ECU that's from a 2002 factory automatic IS300. This was like 50 bucks. And you're probably thinking, like, why would I want to do that? Well, the only thing that I need the ECU on my car for, after I do all the stuff that I'm planning to do to it, which if you haven't watched my introductory video, go and check that out because I walk through everything that I'm going to do to the car and everything that I've bought for it. I have a T56 transmission going into it, so I'm not using the factory IS300 transmission anymore. That's going to be sold. I have an Aristo 2JZ VVTi twin turbo head that's going on to my factory IS300 block with forged internals and big fuel injectors, big fuel rail, precision 6266 turbo. There's a Haltech Elite 2500 ECU that I will be controlling my car with. So the reason that I want to do the automatic ECU in the manual IS300 is because I really don't need the manual ECU anymore. The only thing that I need the ECU for in general, whether it's automatic or manual, is I need the ECU to communicate with the IS300's body computer. So the IS300 has a body computer so that the AC can work, the immobilizer, obviously I don't want somebody to hotwire my car and drive it off after I've got $15,000 worth of stuff done to my engine. So I want my key to be able to, you know, be the only key that starts the car and drives off with it. I think the keyless entry also ties into to the ECU. I don't know, but there's a lot of communication that goes back and forth between the factory ECU and the body computer that's in the IS300. So I don't need a manual IS300 ECU if I can use an automatic one in this place, because the manual one is like, it's considerably more expensive than what this one was. This one was like 50 bucks. So if I fry this one doing what I'm going to try to do with it, then I could just get another $40, $50 ECU. Shipping was free. Don't think I'm gonna fry it though. Most likely it's gonna be okay. So that's what I need it for. So what are the things that I needed to do in order to hopefully make sure that this works on a factory manual IS300? The reprogrammer clip thing that you modify, it actually clips onto this. This is the immobilizer chip, and this one looks like it has been soldered back. I don't know, this was from a parted out IS300. I don't know anything about the history of it, but the solder spots look a lot different than, say, like on this one. This is what my manual IS300 immobilizer chip looked like. This one has been soldered and messed up. It was really hard to get the clip to sit on this one. I had to hold it and press it down and write to it multiple times until it actually had a good enough connection to where it took. But it took. This now has my IS300 keys loaded onto it, so it should work. And I'm going to talk about this wire in a second too. But I want to walk through and talk about this. This is a wire diagram cross-reference between the automatic, which is this left column of the stripe cells, and the right column, which is for the manual. And I have notes here, so there's 5 different connectors for the ECU, and those are all laid out. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I have everything cross-referenced, like what pins go where, both for automatic and manual, only for 2002 to 2005 IS300s, not at all talking about the 2001 IS300, because if you don't know, that car is completely different as far as wiring goes in like every way that you could possibly imagine. It's completely different from this car. 2001s, you can't follow this video to put an automatic computer into a manual IS300. You'd have to figure out how to do it yourself, because that's completely different. It's almost like a completely different car. So I made this, this cross-reference whenever I had the factory automatic wire diagram, and I was tracing out what all the wires are on my factory manual IS300. So I traced out all the wires, I relocated the ECU from the engine bay into the interior, and now it's really just extending the wires a little bit further, coming off of the back side of this, which I'm going to talk about in a second, so that I can plug that into my Haltech Elite 2500. So check that video out down in the description. It's actually a 3-part video, and I would very much like it if you subscribed, because I'm always putting up videos in this vein of car modifications and wiring and things like that. So you can check out my previous videos if you want. I've got about 10 on this car so far, so check those out, and I'm trying to put up 1 video a week. So this, as I said earlier, this is the wire cross-reference sheet that I made whenever I relocated my ECU from the engine bay now into the interior where it sits underneath the driver's seat. These are the 5 connectors, E3, E4, E5, E6, and E7 that go on here. And in order, it's E3, E4, E5, E6, E7. These numbers that I put on the bottom, that's how many pins are on each one of these connectors. And I had to do that so that I knew that pin 1 was up here and pin 34 was down here. Pin 1 is here, pin 35 is down there, and I'll talk about why I had to do that in a second. Going down this, so like I said a little bit ago, this is the automatic column on the left, and this is the manual column on the right. The automatic column, there's a few little issues, right? If you look at connector E3, pin 8, so there's not a wire on the automatic, but there is a wire. It says not on diagram, so it's not on the diagram for the automatic, but it is on the manual O2 IS300 harness. I don't know what this pin is. I'm not sure what it goes to, and it's something that's used for the manual set. I don't know. I don't know what's going to not work whenever I plug this into the car. I guess we're going to find out. But either way, since this is a wire that's on the manual IS300 that's not on the automatic, I don't know what's going to be activated inside the circuitry here, inside this automatic ECU. It's in my best interest to just cut that wire. So instead of cutting it on the wire harness, I'd like to make everything reversible whenever I do things. So if I ever want to put the factory manual computer back into the car and swap back in an engine that is not the turbocharged beast engine, whatever, then I can reverse it fairly easily. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting the some of the wires inside of this ECU instead of where the wires go into the ECU. So where I cut pin 8, pin 18, and pin 25 here, that's the E3 connector, that's this, and 8 and 18 are actually on this this right side. So those are these 2 that are down here, that one and that one. So that's 8 there, and this is 18, because this one up here is pin 1, and all these are, you know, from left to right, top to bottom, but from the inside of the ECU. This is pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it goes back down to the next row, and then it's pin 8. So that's pin 8, and that's pin 18. And then on this side, I had to snip pin 25, which that one is, I think, the 3rd one down. Can't see it, but it's kind of like down. It's down there. So there's this pin, and it would be the 3rd one down, but it's so that one's disconnected. This, I'm just going to talk about this really quickly. So on connector E4, there is pin number 13, I believe. Pin number 13 is it has to do with the shift position whenever you shift the car into drive. Now, what the guys have to do whenever they put manual transmission into their automatic IS300, if they want to still use their automatic ECU, they actually have to jumper E4 with another wire that just gives it a solid power, because this needs a steady positive signal to tell the car's ECU that the car is in drive. I don't know what that does with the car's ECU, but for some reason it does need to know that it's in drive in order for everything to work. I'm going to see, it's why I haven't connected this yet. I'm actually going to see if this works without me having to solder this to something else. But just in case I do, this little pin down here that I've marked black, that's the ignition 1 signal that comes whenever you turn the key on. So when I turn the key, the ignition 1 signal powers up this ECU. So I am basically, didn't mean to do that. This is a non-magnetic screwdriver, so it's not going to damage the circuit board. Magnets aren't good around circuit boards, FYI. So I'm just going to solder that to this, and that way this would send a power signal from here, and it would make the computer think that the car is in drive. So that's what guys have to do whenever they keep their automatic ECU in the IS300 and they swap in a manual transmission. So there's that. One thing that I thought would be an issue, but it turned out to not be an issue, is the park neutral switch and the clutch start switch. So on connector E3, those are actually, it's the same pin on here, and it's both the same wire color. And when I looked at the wire diagram, they both take a positive signal from the 7.5 fuse for the start relay, I guess. So both of those, whether it's the clutch start or the neutral switch, both of those get a positive signal from the fuse. It goes through whichever switch, if it's an automatic or if it's a manual, it goes through that switch, and then it goes into the start relay, so that the start relay gets power, and then you can start the car. So this isn't going to be an issue. I can leave that connected as it is, connector E3, pin 12, so that's going to stay the same. Pin 31 on connector E4 was like the hardest one to get to, because it was actually down in the middle, all the way down, pointing down there. So I had to squish all of these over, all these little pins. I had to push them over that way, and then these that are here, I had to push them over this way so that I could get down with my snips and then cut the wire. So I did that, and then I actually, whenever I would cut the wire, I pulled it out through the front of the connector so that it's not still there and it doesn't risk touching one of these other ones. So there's that I had to do to connector E4. E5 doesn't have to be changed. E6, that had to be cut, and I also cut pin 5, even though I don't think I would have had to cut that one. It's a wire that's on the automatic wire loom, but it's not on the manual transmission. So there's actually just not even a wire in this place on my connector on pin 5. So that connector, pin 5, connector E6, there's just not a pin 5 wire there at all. So all of these that I wrote in, these are all automatic. They're all automatic wire colors. So some of them go to the solenoids, like the drive solenoid, the reverse solenoid, so different solenoids inside the transmission. And these that are S1, S2, S3, S4, I'm not sure what those are. I think those are just signal wires that come from the transmission to say what gear it's in. So whenever the automatic transmission's in first, second, third, or fourth, it would be sending a signal on one of those. I don't know. That's my best guess, because these are automatic transmission only. And then connector E7, it's just this pin 34, and that one's pretty easy to get to. You can look down there, right there. So it's that fourth one in, if you're counting, like coming off the board, like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's that one. And that one's also not on the automatic wire diagram, but it's a wire that's on the manual transmission IS300. And also, if you notice here, automatic transmission has a speed sensor that goes into connector E6. So this would normally get speed, and then it would output the speed to the gauge cluster. But fortunately, in the manual transmission models, the vehicle speed sensor actually communicates directly with the gauges, so I don't have to change any of this stuff. This computer just won't think that it's going anywhere. It seems like the gauges would work as they're supposed to and still calculate I guess we'll find out. I'm going to take this on a test drive after I plug in my my hacked up automatic transmission ECU. And if you look at all of these other ones, these are all wires that are eventually going to be fed into the Haltech. As I cut each of these pins individually off of the board and then feed this into a wire that comes outside of the case and goes into my Haltech connector that plugs into the Haltech ECU. So I can run my engine management, and this would still get power so that I can have my AC controls, my keyless entry works, the immobilizer chip works like it's supposed to, and you know, that way somebody doesn't drive off with my car after hot wiring it when I've got $15,000 worth of performance parts and upgrades into it. I just stopped the camera and then grabbed some extra stuff really quickly, but these are the connectors actually that go onto the Haltech ECU. I had to order these separately to go onto the Elite 2500 and also the Elite 1500. Maybe other Haltechs, but I know they do work on the 2500 and the 1500. So I'm going to basically be using this with wires coming out of these connectors going into the back side of here under each one of these little pins after they're snipped and cut off of the board, so that this can no longer control the engine. It's just really plugged in and sitting there so that it communicates with the body computer. And all the wires coming out of it will be going to the Haltech Elite 2500. I don't want to keep this, but I dug through the wire diagram trying to figure out a way that I could keep the body computer alive and getting signals that it's happy with without having this fat thing in the way. And the best thing I could figure is to get an automatic ECU, hack it up, and then sell my manual ECU. Okay, so now the next part, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to put this back if I need to. So this little wire, I kind of touched on it earlier, but that is just in case the something doesn't work right in the car without having that drive wire connected. So this tricks the computer into thinking that the drive is selected with the automatic shift lever, because it would be giving power to that that pin that is down there that I had this slipped on. So I'll put that back and then solder it to that little black pin that's down there if something doesn't work like it's supposed to. But right now I'm going to put this back inside the case. I've reprogrammed the automatic IS300 ECU to accept my manual IS300 keys. I still have the stuff on the table out in my kitchen, so I'm going to show what all I've done there in a second. So I'm going to walk in the house and just show how it's set up. Check out Binh's video that's in the description. It's very beneficial. It's easily the coolest thing that I've ever seen on YouTube. So I'm going to go in the house and show what I had to do to set this up. Okay, so I'm in the house. That's the automatic ECU. This is the case for the manual ECU. This is the chip programmer tool. I'm gonna unplug it. And this is the clip. So it's just basically something like this. You just kind of clip it onto the board. It was very hard to get it to stick into place because these little wires slipped off of the back a little bit. These had kind of like slipped out some, and I had to push them in so that these teeth, because those wires are directly connected to these teeth and there's nothing else holding them in. So I was able to push these back down so that I can get a better connection onto this little chip. It's the IC900 chip down there. And whenever you connect to this red stripe is on this side, kind of nearest to that eye in the IC900. So he talks about all that in his video. So this is my chip information. So this is for the manual. So this is what the automatic ECU read after I programmed it. This, you can see like I soldered wires onto this little board, and this little board slides into this little lever thing. It locks the board in place. So him and so Binh from Tuner with Kids and DrShock, they both walk you through how to make that, but Binh shows you more in detail how to set it up for Toyota applications. All right, let's see who's placing bets on whether this thing's gonna start or not. Ha 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 ha. the car usually kind of runs like this. Come on, don't die. Okay, come on. It's got a lot of oil that's being leaked into the engine from the turbo. So now it would have all burned out that first time I tried to start it. I know I'm revving a cold engine. I'm not too concerned with that right now because I'm gonna fully rebuild this thing. But let's go drive around, see what happens. Gas gauge is working, RPM gauge works, my odometer is showing stuff. So yeah, see what happens. Speedo works, battery voltage works. My miles per gallon needle, the one that's on top that I never really cared too much for, that's not working right now. Not sure why. Well, I could probably guess. I could probably guess why. It might have something to do with there being an automatic ECU controlling a manual car. Oh, come on, make it up the hill. You can do it. It works. This is crazy. Okay, well, it's not crazy. It's just like really cool. I have a factory automatic 2002 ECU that is currently controlling a factory manual IS300. This is nuts. So, yeah. This is pretty cool. Air fuel ratio is horribly off on this thing. I keep adjusting it and it goes crazy. The AEM FIC6 it's ridiculous. It has so much trouble controlling this thing. And between that, the clutch slipping and oil leaking from the turbo into the engine, it's just, yeah. But everything works. My temperature gauge is going up, but that's not tied into the ECU, it looks like. So this is pretty exciting. This is really actually pretty exciting. Let me see. AC works. Yeah. AC, well, it's not cold, but the AC light's on and it's not flashing, so my AC was cold. I'm not sure if that's related or not. All right, back in the garage now. I know the car runs horribly. I kind of bought it like this, so it's a work in progress. Not too concerned with fixing the issues. And yes, I know I didn't let my turbo timer cool down the turbo, but this turbo, it's cheap and it's junk right now. I actually want to see what all OBD codes are popping up from this computer now that I'm back. P2716, P2725, P2759, those seem like automatic codes. Pressure control solenoid. Pressure control solenoid, and the other one, drum roll please, will it be pressure control solenoid? Torque converter. So I have a problem with my torque converter, apparently. So the pressure control solenoid for the torque converter. Well, none of those things are on this car. That's why, computer. This is the coolest thing I think I've ever done. So back over here, I've put the manual ECU back on top, and this is it. This is the manual ECU. It's fine. It wasn't controlling the car just now. I guess you kind of have to just take my word on that one, but this is cool. So if you want to follow on to my next video, next week's video, what I'm actually going to be doing is soldering on a wire to a bunch of these little pins that come off of the board on, not on this one, this is the manual ECU, but on the automatic ECU that's currently in the car that I was just driving around with. So I'm going to do that so that I can, like I said earlier, connect all those wires into the plug that goes onto the Haltech Elite 2500 ECU. So that way I can build a base map on it. I'm going to use the ignition map that's currently on the AEM FIC6 that's controlling the car, because the ignition map's not going to change. It's just telling the computer what to do. So I'm going to pull that ignition map off. I'm going to put it on the Haltech, so that way I don't have to take this and dyno it, and I don't have to drive it around to find what the ignition base map should be. I can just use the one that's currently on the car. And then whenever I actually put the new engine in, that's when I will need a new ignition base map, because different compression ratio, larger turbo, everything would have to be retuned after that. This is going to be a basic baseline tune. I will have more control over the air-fuel ratios than the factory computer arguing with the AEM FIC6, and then I don't want to work with the AEM FIC6 anymore. So I'm putting the Haltech on this for the last couple weeks before I pull this engine out. So follow on to the next video if you want to see the Haltech base map built, and then all of everywhere that I'm connecting the wires. I'm probably going to put a little side-by-side reference thing to like which pin I'm connecting to which pin on the Haltech from the IS300 ECU to the Haltech. And that would be the same for both automatic and manual transmissions, because the manual transmission IS300 ECU, it has all the same stuff as far as engine controls as the automatic. The only difference is there's one sensor that comes with the vehicle speed sensor that feeds into the automatic IS300 ECU that's not in the manual IS300 ECU. That goes straight to the gauges. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share it with your friends, because this, I was kind of thinking this might not work, and it did work. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting when stuff like that happens. And I didn't have to solder that extra little wire on that I showed. So I don't know what that would have done. Probably wouldn't have changed much of anything, but yeah, it may have taken the check engine lights off. I think that's what I read on the forums. If I take the check engine lights off by soldering that little wire on. But that's it. Thanks a lot for watching, and God bless you guys.